Every year, another classic gets rebooted. Another movie trailer promises to bring back your childhood. Another old game gets remastered. Same graphics, new price tag. And every time we click, we watch, we buy. Because it's comforting. That hit of familiarity. That reminder of a time when life felt simpler. But what if that feeling isn't accidental? What if it's being manufactured, packaged and sold back to us? See, nostalgia used to be spontaneous. It happened when an old song played on the radio or when you stumbled across your childhood toy in the attic. It was personal. Now, nostalgia is a marketing strategy. Corporations have learned that our memories are one of the most powerful emotional triggers they can exploit, and they have built an entire industry around it. From Disney remakes to retro video games, from reissued toys to shows that pretend to be from the past, the nostalgia industry thrives on our desire to reconnect with who we used to be. But in doing so, it raises an uncomfortable question. Are we really revisiting our past or just consuming a corporate version of it? This is the nostalgia industry, how corporations learn to sell us our own childhood. Before we get to how companies sell us our childhood, we need to understand what's really being sold. Nostalgia itself. Because nostalgia isn't just a vibe or a passing emotion. It's a biological, deeply wired, and incredibly powerful psychological response. The word nostalgia comes from two Greek roots, nostos, meaning return home, and algos, meaning pain. Literally, the pain of returning home. It was first coined in 1688 by a Swiss medical student named Johannes Hofer, who noticed that soldiers fighting abroad suffered mysterious symptoms, insomnia, fever, even heart palpitations, whenever they longed for home. To them, nostalgia was a disease. It wasn't warm or sentimental. It was a form of psychological distress. In the centuries that followed, doctors tried to cure nostalgia like it was an infection, with leeches, opium, or a military punishment. But by the 20th century, nostalgia evolved from a medical diagnosis into an emotional state, something bittersweet rather than pathological. Psychologists began to see it as a self-soothing mechanism, the mind's way of reaching back into memory for comfort when the present feels uncertain. Today, we can literally see nostalgia in action through brain scans. When people experience it, the mesolimbic reward system, the same part of the brain activated by music, food, or love, lights up. The hippocampus pulls old memories from long-term storage, while the amygdala colors them with emotion. Together, they release dopamine, the chemical that gives us that rush of warmth and familiarity. That's why a single whiff of a childhood cereal or hearing the opening jingle of your favorite Saturday morning cartoon can make your body react before your mind even catches up. But nostalgia isn't just about memory, it's about identity. Psychologists have found that nostalgic reflection often peaks during times of change or instability. Moving to a new city, graduating, or living through uncertain times. When our present feels fractured, we retreat into the past to remind ourselves of who we are. And this effect isn't just emotional, it's behavioral. Studies have shown that nostalgia can increase social connectedness, reduce anxiety, and even make people feel physically warmer. A study named Heartwarming Memories, Nostalgia Maintains Physiological Comfort from 2012 has shown that the participants who were exposed to nostalgic memories reported feeling warmer in a cold room than those who weren't. There's even evidence that nostalgia can make people more generous, more trusting, and more willing to spend. In marketing terms, that's a goldmine. Because if nostalgia can lower psychological defenses, if it can make us feel safe, happy, and connected, it can also make us more open to buying things that recreate that feeling. So when we rewatch an old show or buy a classic edition console, we are not just buying a product, we are buying a shortcut to the dopamine rush of memory. It's essentially neurochemical manipulation wrapped in childhood comfort. Nostalgia turns the past into emotional currency. It makes memory itself a marketplace, and corporations, ever perceptive of what makes us tick, learned to bottle that feeling. How did corporations figure this out? How did something as intimate and personal as nostalgia become one of the most profitable products on earth? Because nostalgia in advertising isn't new. It's been a marketing tool for almost a century. Even in the 1950s, American brands were already selling the idea of simpler times. Coca-Cola ads told you that sharing a Coke could connect generations, parents and children, past and present, with one universal symbol of happiness. In a post-war world of consumer optimism, nostalgia became shorthand for stability. It reassured people that even as everything changed, some things, family, home, the Coke bottle, stayed the same. But by the late 20th century, something changed. Marketers stopped selling your parents' nostalgia and started selling yours. Because children grow up, but their emotional attachments don't. And if you sell those attachments, you're not selling a product, you're selling identity. Take Nintendo. In 2016, they released the NES Classic Edition, a miniature version of their 1985 console. It sold out almost immediately. Scalpers resold it for triple the price. And yet, the games themselves, Super Mario Bros., Zelda, Metroid, weren't rare. You could play them anywhere, legally or not. So why did millions of adults rush to buy something they already owned or could easily emulate for free? Because they weren't paying for pixels. They were paying for ritual, for the grey box under the TV, for the stiff click of that rectangular controller, for the moment of blowing into the cartridge, even though that never actually fixed anything. They were paying for the feeling of being 8 again, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by possibility. Nintendo understood something deeper than nostalgia. They understood muscle memory. The NES Classic wasn't just a console, it was a time machine designed to fit in your hand. And nobody has mastered this better than Disney. When Disney released the live-action Lion King remake in 2019, critics were underwhelmed. They said it lacked the emotional warmth of the original, that it felt uncanny, lifeless, overly realistic, and yet the film made over $1.6 billion worldwide. Why? Because Disney wasn't selling the story, they were selling the memory of the story. They were selling the memory of sitting too close to the CRT television, of rewinding your Lion King VHS for the 10th time, of hearing your parents hum along to Circle of Life. They were selling the sensation of being back in a world where everything, even grief, felt safe, predictable, and animated. Disney knows their animated catalog isn't just a set of films, it's a cultural archive, a collective childhood. They have turned memory itself into an intellectual property. Every few years, they repackage it. First on VHS, then on DVD, then on Blu-ray, then in 4K, and finally on Disney+. Each time it's marketed as the definitive edition. But what's really being sold isn't better resolution, it's reassurance. That your past is still accessible, that it hasn't been lost to time, that you can relive it with just one more subscription. This is nostalgia's final evolution, commodified memory. It's not about the product itself, it's about what the product symbolizes. Marketers realize that when a generation grows up, they don't leave their culture behind. They carry it with them, like an emotional operating system. And if you can access that system, if you can make a 30-year-old feel like a kid again for 30 seconds, you can sell almost anything. That's how nostalgia stopped being a side effect of culture and became the engine of it. So far, we have talked about nostalgia as something organic, a memory reawakened by a sound, a smell, a familiar logo. But what happens when that memory doesn't exist? That's where corporations get even smarter. They learned not only how to tap into nostalgia, but how to manufacture it. Take Crystal Pepsi. When it debuted in 1992, it was a novelty. A clear cola meant to symbolize a pure, transparent future. But it failed almost immediately. The experiment disappeared. And yet, when Pepsi resurrected it in 2010, it became a sensation. People lined up to buy it. Bottles sold out. Limited re-releases sparked bidding wars online. Not because anyone actually missed Crystal Pepsi. Few even remembered drinking it. But because Pepsi told them it was nostalgic. It didn't need fond memories. Only faint ones. Recognition alone was enough. The brand had found a new formula. Nostalgia not as remembrance, but as aesthetic. A repackaged emotion that could be applied retroactively, even to something that never truly mattered. The McRib follows the same logic. It's not a menu item, it's an event. McDonald's doesn't sell it year-round. Instead, they engineer scarcity. It returns every few years, accompanied by ads thick with retro filters and sentimental music. The limited time offer becomes a ritual. People don't crave the sandwich itself. They crave the experience of its return. Each appearance is framed like a cultural holiday, nostalgic and collective. The McRib isn't a product anymore, it's a memory simulator. But now here is manufactured nostalgia more pervasive than in media. And Stranger Things is a perfect example. The show bathes itself in 1980s iconography. The walkie-talkies, the arcade cabinets, the kids on bikes archetype. The visual texture is pure VHS, the warm glow of analog light, the music synth-heavy and familiar. Yet, most of its audience wasn't even alive during the 1980s. What they are responding to isn't personal nostalgia, but borrowed nostalgia, a reconstructed past, built entirely out of cultural shorthand. It's a fantasy of a time that feels comforting, precisely because we don't remember its complications, only its aesthetics. The 80s of Stranger Things never existed. It's not Reaganomics or Cold War anxiety or small-town politics. It's the memory of Spielberg movies and mall food courts, remixed through a 21st century lens. It's nostalgia without history, perfectly safe, perfectly marketable. This borrowed nostalgia has become one of the entertainment industry's most reliable tools. It allows brands to conjure emotional authenticity without the burden of lived experience. It doesn't matter whether you remember the 80s, the culture remembers for you. And of course, corporations are eager collaborators. In Stranger Things, Coca-Cola doesn't just appear, it's canon. The show's third season featured a storyline around the re-release of New Coke, a product that famously failed in 1985. For Coke, it was a masterstroke, a self-referential ad campaign, embedded inside the most nostalgic show on television. This is a new frontier. Nostalgia with no original point. It's a loop, a memory of a memory, endlessly reinterpreted until it becomes its own brand identity. You don't need to have lived through the past to feel nostalgic for it. You just need the aesthetic vocabulary, the right fonts, the right color palette, the right soundtrack. Retro now functions as a genre, a style detached from any real chronology. A 2000s reboot of an 80s story filmed in 2020, scored with 90s music, consumed on a platform designed to recommend you vintage media made yesterday. What began as a way to remember has turned into a way to belong. Nostalgia isn't just about the past anymore, it's about participating in a shared illusion of it. And as long as there is profit in that illusion, there's no reason for it to ever end. By now, nostalgia is a fully industrialized commodity, an economy built around selling the comfort of the past, packaged for the anxieties of the present. It thrives on instability. Whenever the world feels uncertain, during recessions, political conflicts, pandemics, people retreat toward the familiar. That yearning for simpler times becomes a collective instinct, a way to momentarily feel safe in a world that doesn't. And corporations have learned how to turn that instinct into infrastructure. Streaming platforms, for instance, don't just distribute nostalgia, they depend on it. Netflix's rise coincided with the golden age of reboots and revivals. Cobra Kai, Fuller House, The Babysitter's Club, Gilmore Girls. Each of these titles functions like a reunion between audiences and their younger selves. The pitch isn't innovation, it's continuity. Remember this? It's back. And that emotional shortcut is priceless for platforms that live and die by subscription numbers. It's cheaper to revive an old show than to take a risk on something new. The audience is already trained to care. Disney Plus took this logic and turned it into its entire business identity. The streaming service is a digital vault, a place where childhood never expires. The same films, once locked away in the Disney vault, are now endlessly accessible, repackaged as both comfort and canon. Every few years, the company reintroduces its classics, this time in live action in 4K with photorealistic fur. Critics may roll their eyes, but audiences show up anyway, driven less by curiosity than by recognition. It's not that people expect these films to be better, they expect them to feel familiar. That's the efficiency of nostalgia. It guarantees emotional engagement before the story even begins. Theme parks like Disney World and Universal Studios take this formula into the physical realm. They are not theme parks in the traditional sense anymore. They are nostalgia ecosystems. Every attraction, every souvenir, every meal is designed to recreate an emotional state from the media you once consumed. You're not just visiting a park, you're walking inside the iconography of your own childhood. Every ticket sold is an admission fee to relive something that never truly existed outside your imagination. For media corporations, nostalgia isn't risky, it's algorithmically safe. Original stories can fail, nostalgia rarely does. It comes preloaded with audience awareness, online discourse, and multi-generational appeal. That's why Hollywood now functions less like a creative industry and more like an asset management firm. Studios don't just own intellectual property, they own emotional real estate. When they revive Ghostbusters, Top Gun, or Jurassic Park, they're not just resurrecting their stories, they're refinancing memories. These reboots operate like cultural derivatives, old ideas reissued under new conditions, engineered to yield predictable emotional returns. When The Force Awakens premiered in 2015, fans cried in theaters before the story even began. The Millennium Falcon appeared, John Williams' score swelled, and that was enough. The nostalgia hit was the product, the movie merely contained it. And Disney understands this better than anyone else. They've built a global economy on emotional continuity. The idea that you never have to let go of what made you feel good. The result is a marketplace that no longer competes for novelty, but for recognition. Studios don't ask what's next anymore. They ask what can we bring back. The business of memory doesn't just shape what we watch, it shapes what we remember. And in that process, the past becomes less about what it was and more about how effectively it can be monetized. But there's a price. When everything becomes nostalgia, we risk suffocating originality. Hollywood has never been this risk-averse. The top-grossing films every year are almost always sequels, reboots, or superhero movies. Gaming is dominated by remasters and re-releases. Skyrim has been sold more times than most new IPs even get a chance. Even food and fashion are caught up in the loop. Walk through a clothing store and you'll see 90s inspired everything. And the irony? Nostalgia itself fades fast. That dopamine hit of seeing a childhood snack or a rebooted movie wears off quickly. Which is why companies keep feeding us the next one and the next. And the next. It's a treadmill of longing for something you can never actually get back. Because no matter how many times they reboot The Lion King, you'll never be 7 years old again, sitting cross-legged in front of a glowing CRT TV. Now, nostalgia isn't inherently bad. It can be beautiful. Watching old cartoons with your kids, dusting off a retro console with friends, revisiting a movie that shaped your childhood. Those can be genuine sources of joy. Indie creators often use nostalgia as inspiration. Cuphead drew from 1930s animation to create something new. Undertale used 90s RPG aesthetics to tell a story no one had told before. Even games like Minecraft are now old enough to carry their own nostalgia for a new generation. The difference is intention. When nostalgia is used as a springboard, it leads to creativity. When it's used as a product, it leads to recycling. The danger isn't remembering the past. The danger is letting corporations dictate how we remember it and charging us admission. At the end of the day, the nostalgia industry thrives because it promises the impossible. That you can go back. That if you buy the right collectible, the right ticket, the right streaming subscription, you can rewind time. But the truth is, you can't, and that's okay. Your memories are yours. They don't belong to Disney or Nintendo or Netflix. They don't need to be rebooted, remastered or resold. So the next time a company waves your childhood in your face, remember, they are not giving you your past. They are selling you the illusion of it. And maybe the best way to honor your nostalgia is to hold on to your memories on your own terms, not theirs. Thanks for watching. What's the biggest cash grab you've ever seen? Let me know in the comments. And maybe instead of buying another retro collectible, just dust off the ones you already own. After all, those were always yours. If you liked watching this video, maybe consider subscribing and liking that video. As this is one of my first videos, I'm also happy to hear things I could do better. See ya.